Hey guys, how's it going? So I'm back with another video about borderline personality disorder, and the clinical manifestation that I want to talk about today is the overvaluation and extreme devaluation of partners in relationships. So if you're a person with borderline personality disorder, you might notice that you have certain times in which you really love and really value your partner to extreme heights, and then you have moments in which you really hate that person. You really cannot stand that person, yet all you see is bad. And this is a common thing that happens in people with borderline personality disorder. Now, the thing is that if you have these clinical manifestations, but it's hard to identify when these clinical manifestations hit in, especially when you're not really that well accustomed or that well equipped with the ability to monitor yourself and to gain the right insight on the condition. And this requires training, it requires time, it requires a lot of self-focus. So it's a hard project that you have to do. It's a strategy, and it's a plan that you have to undertake to combat this kind of condition, because you have to understand one thing: this condition is not you. That means the emotions and what you feel during this condition does not represent your actual thought. That's something that people get mixed out about. And watching this video on Reddit, chatting with a person with borderline personality disorder, she is completely mixed about and confused about the clinical manifestations of borderline and her own personality. And I'm not saying this because I want to criticize this person or because I'm somehow angry with the person or something. No, it's a very practical analysis of the video, and I think I'm in the right position to say this because I myself have borderline personality disorder. So if I'm an outsider and I watch the video and I start to criticize it, it may come off as wrong. But because I have the condition myself, I can more accurately verify what I'm seeing in the video and whether it's correct or not. Now, the first thing I want to get off my chest is that borderline comes with different personalities. So your core personality has nothing to do with borderline. So you can be the kind of person who is more outgoing, you can be more of a shy person, you can be a person who has certain preferences. It's different. So you got different kinds of people, but all of them can have borderline personality disorder. So it's not specific to a certain personality type. And I'm not going to talk about different personality types in terms of the typology and the Jung's mechanism or the Jung's philosophy in dividing personalities into 4 different letters and all that. I try to keep my talk as factual and as medical as possible, because my analysis is based on my background of medical school, and I try to keep it as strong as possible and as feasible as possible in a scientific manner. And that's why I'm not going to go into the different personality types and what kind of personality type is more likely to have borderline. As a general consensus, it comes with different personalities, and I have to say that her personality is more of a shy personality. She is very thoughtful. She takes lots of time to think about what she's going to say. She's a bit conflicted about the situation. You see a little bit tears in her eyes. You see the interaction. She looks, you see the tear in her eyes. It's like she just came out of an episode and she's really sad about it, and she's in the interview. Now, this can deceive people who watch this. This can deceive both people who have borderline and who don't have borderline. If you watch this, and what I'm concerned about is someone who has borderline who watches this video and thinks, oh shit, this is how she is. This is probably how I am. This is probably how people perceive me. Oh my god. And you start to panic about that, because you start to panic on how your self-perception goes to other people based on these kinds of videos. But what you have to know is that this is one kind of personality. She's a shy person. You don't have to be a shy person. It looks like she's in a lot of trouble. She's really sad. You don't have to necessarily be that. And I don't know if she has other comorbidities in addition to her borderline personality disorder. Now, one thing that I notice about her is that the dress and the clothes and the fancy kind of outfit, we have this in psychiatry, that when you want to spot someone with schizophrenia, there's a typical kind of extravagant kind of way of dressing. So I don't know if she has any kind of other comorbidities that are influencing her borderline personality disorder. I'm not sure if this is the hallmark of her psychiatric conditions. Maybe there's a underlying psychiatric condition that is bigger than borderline, that needs more attention, and that is actually representing itself more than borderline in this personality. But what struck my attention most about this video is that when he asked her about, do you feel violence towards other people, she was silent for a moment, and then she said yes. And I thought this is an important time to start addressing the topic of overvaluation, devaluation of other people in partnerships and relationships, and how that affects the behavior of borderline. So what you have to understand is that, I always say this in the videos, and you probably know this, that in borderline you have so if we're in borderline here, you have a hyperstimulation of emotions. So it can be either positive, can be negative. The emotions, it goes through here, and they're always over-exaggerated, right? And this can lead to confusion. So especially if it's the red one, if it's the negative emotion that is over-exaggerated. So it's exaggerated, it's going up. If you're in a relationship and you have borderline personality disorder, you're going to perceive lots of good things about your partner, and you're going to perceive lots of bad things about your partner. And this is not just about relationships, romantic relationships, but also in friendships, close friends, family, relatives, people that you deal with on a continuous basis, work. And when you go through this here, when you perceive something negative from the other person, so let me write this down. Negative perception from the person you deal with. Alright, you get this negative perception. And the negative perception goes through your brain. You absorb this perception. And the negative output, the negative emotion that you feel as a result from this negative perception is highly over-exaggerated. This makes you confused about your actual thoughts. You think that this overstimulation of emotion is genuine. Well, I'm going to tell you no, it's not genuine. Yes, the negative perception, this is genuine. This is the part that is genuine. You've seen something bad about the person you're dealing with. It's something negative. You've realized that it's negative, and that's true. That's not the part that is to be discussed. The part that is to be discussed is how that emotion of negativity is being processed. So you process it in an over-exaggerated way, and that's the problem, right? That is not a real expression of what you feel. You feel this because this is the condition. You don't feel this because this is based on rational thought. It's not like, okay, I rationally thought about having an exaggerated bad response towards this kind of behavior or the thing that ticked me off from the other person. No. You have this because you cannot control how exaggerated your emotions are due to the condition. That means they're not really genuine emotions. They're not really real. So when someone asks you, do you feel like you want to hurt someone? And you say yes, it means that you don't know how to differentiate between the over-exaggeration of emotion and between the actual negative perception. It means you're mixing those two, and you don't know how to separate them. You don't know when an emotion is a baseline emotion that is normal, and you don't know when the emotion is over-exaggerated, which is abnormal. You don't know the difference between this and this, and if you don't know the difference, you're going to think that this part is the part that actually represents you. And when someone asks you, do you want to hurt someone, you say yes. And that's that's a big problem. That you have to understand that if you have borderline personality disorder, you don't want to hurt someone. This is not actually you. This is not the baseline thought process that is going through your head. And as evidence for that is if you calm down If you give yourself a few hours to calm down from your rage or your negative emotion, you go back to a normal baseline of emotion. This year goes back down. It goes back down to normal. And yeah, you're still upset about the negative emotion, but you're not as reactive to it because the initial spike has gone down. And if I ask you, do you want to hurt someone? If you're here, you're going to say no. See the variation between here and here? This variation is important. You have to realize this variation. This is called insight, or the ability to monitor the condition. If you have this kind of realization of the condition that you're going through, you're going to be able to block the anxiety that you have about being violent. You're going to block the anxiety. You know, having this kind of differentiation between the yes and the no, knowing which is the baseline emotion that is normal and what is the exaggerated emotion that is not normal, between this and this allows you to have this kind of range, this range of realization when something is baseline and when it's not. And this allows you to block the anxiety. So when you go through a period of rage and anger and disgust and dislike towards your partner and you feel you want to hurt that person, you know that this is not a genuine emotion, and you know that you're not going to act on it because it's not a rational emotion, and your brain knows that it's not a rational thing to do. And that blocks your anxiety, knowing that this is just the condition playing around, right? So you block the anxiety, and you know that no, I'm not a violent person. This is not who I actually am. This is not reflective of myself. So blocking this anxiety can get this thing out of your head. You're able to differentiate between what is normal, what is not normal, when you're going through the conditions manifestations and when you're not going through the conditions manifestation. And this insight allows yourself to have a calm mind. You're not going to get nervous about confrontations. You're not going to feel like you're going to kill someone. You're not going to feel like you're going to hurt someone. And it's true, there are some statistics about certain inmates who have borderline and the prevalence of borderline being higher, but that's not because borderline itself. That's because, okay, let me draw this up. You have a proportion of society, right? And say, for example, 10% have a mental condition, right? Borderline, schizophrenia, anything. And inmates come from all here. They come from everywhere. So the likelihood of them having a mental condition is always prevalent. This kind of statistical correlation between this and them being inmates is not a causative correlation. That means it's not a cause. It's a statistical correlation, but not a causative correlation. And the difference between a statistical versus causative correlation is that in a statistical correlation, you can, for example, have a relation between the number of rabbits in the world and the rising sea level. So the more rabbits, the more the rabbit population increases in the world, the more the sea level rises on shores. Now there is a statistical correlation between the two, but is it causative? Is the sea level rising because the number of rabbits is increasing? No. It has nothing to do with each other. That's why the relationship is not causative in nature. It's just a statistical correlation that you can draw on anything. And the same goes here. Just because the inmate has a mental condition is not a conclusive factor for that mental condition being cause of the condition. Now I do have to admit that sometimes the range of borderline personality disorder and how it affects people is different. So for some people it might be more severe than other people, especially if there are comorbidities within the condition, and especially if that person had a different kind of place where he grew up, where that person grew up. That all affects the likelihood of crime, right? But as a general consensus, violence and borderline personality disorder, it's usually targeted towards self. So, in either suicide, self-mutilation, self-harm, substance abuse, risky behavior, it's always on self. Yes, sometimes other people can get dragged into this, but not because you want to go against these other people, but you go against yourself, and as a result of going against yourself, you're going to encompass other people who are in your surrounding by mistake. You don't do it on purpose because you want to damage those people. You do it because it happens that they're in your surrounding, and that sometimes results in this kind of collateral damage, if you want to call it that way. It's not always the case. It can happen. So if you're in a risky behavior, if you're driving risky, you're going to put other people in danger, people who are sitting with you. I had this one time. I was driving with my friend, and I got excited while driving. I don't know, we spoke about something that was really nice, and I got so excited I started to speed up during driving, and he was like, "Hey, slow down. Why are you speeding up?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'm just happy. I'm excited." And I was a bit reckless in that moment of excitation. That hyper-stimulated excitation caused me to be reckless. And if that would have caused an accident, the damage would have been collateral on my friend, not because I want to hurt him, but because my behavior has somehow reflected on the people around me. And thank God it's that way. Because isn't that how most people are? It's a really small fraction of people who would directly want to damage other people around them. You really have to have some kind of sort of serious condition, that more serious condition than borderline, that would cause you to deliberately want to damage other people. And it doesn't happen in splitting. When you go through splitting in borderline, yes, you have this ultimate rage against your person, but you still know the rationale in your head overrides the split. All right, so I'll come to the core of this video, which is devaluation and overvaluation of partners, and I'll give you 3 situations. I'll draw up 3 situations. This is going to be situation 1. This is going to be situation 2. And this is going to be situation 3. Okay? And I hope this example is going to explain to you how relationships work in humans, and in particular in borderline personality disorder. So these 2 arrows represent humans. These are bad traits, and these are good traits. So the green arrow represents the good traits that we see in people. The red arrow represents the bad traits that we perceive in other people. Now this is situation 1. This is situation 2, and this is situation 3. I'm going to give you a little quiz. What do you do in situation 1 when the bad traits in a certain situation are more than the good traits? Word. Strengthen bond. Positive interaction. Number 2, punish. Weaken the bond. Weaken the bond. Negative interaction. I'm going to give you this quiz, and you have to choose one of these 2 answers. So, in situation 1, when you're dealing with a person and this person is showing you more bad traits than good traits, as you can see here, the bad traits, they're longer. The arrow of the bad traits is longer than the arrow of the good traits. What do you do? Are you going to choose the answer number 1 or the answer number 2? Are you going to give him or give that person a reward, as in strengthening the bond and having a positive interaction, or are you going to punish the person in the sense of having a weakened bond and a negative reaction from yourself, like being, I don't like this, and negativity in a general sense? So you choose the answer, and the answer is probably going to be number 2. You're probably going to choose this because now the bad traits are more. Now what about in situation 2 when the good traits are more than the bad traits? Wow, the person you're dealing with, your partner for example, is doing really nice things. The person gave you a present, the person lovefully woke you up in the morning, and the person gave you a present and expressed their love towards you. That is so nice. So the good traits, the good arrow is higher than the bad arrow. So what you do is usually, if I'm going to ask you what are you going to do in situation 2, which of the two answers, you're probably going to choose answer 1, reward, strengthen the bond, and positive interaction. Now if I'm going to ask you what are you going to do in situation 3, when the good is same as the bad. So you wake up in the morning, you see your friend, your partner, and well, it's nothing really spectacular about him or her. Nothing really bad about him or her. It's just normal. It's just equal, right? The bad and the good is equal. The person looks a little bit, messy because they just woke out of bed. But at the same time, they said good morning in a nice way, and it's just nice to see them. So which of the two are you going to choose in situation 3? Are you going to choose the reward, or are you going to choose the punish? I think you're certainly going to choose this, reward. And this is going to lead me to my next question. Why did you choose number 1? Why did you choose the positive response in situation 3, although the two arrows are equal? There's no justification to use response number 1, but you still chose response number 1. Why? Because now there's a different factor that is playing here. It's not just about arrows. It's about being human. It's about friendship. It's about bonding. It's about how relationships work as humans. And so you chose number 1 because you know that this person is your friend, this person is your partner, this person is with you in a relationship, and that's why this here is prevalent as a baseline emotion. And that's why even when the bad and the good are equal, you're still going to choose number 1, because this is just the baseline, your friends, your partners, and this is how it is, right? So in situation 1, is it fair to use number 2 as a response? Because we just realized that regardless of the arrows, even if the arrows are equal and there's no rationale to use number 1 or number 2, you still chose number 1. Because there's a different perspective here. There's the baseline perspective of having love and liking and friendship and emotion that plays a role in this. So it overrides the rationale of quantifying the good and the bad. And you have to be fair with the people that you deal with. And fairness implies that even if the bad traits are more at a certain situation, you still have to apply the baseline of human friendship and human bonding. Even if the bad is more than the good, you still have to be fair. Now you're going to ask me, why is this fair? I'm going to tell you why. Because you, towards that other person, also have situations in which the bad traits are more than the good traits. And what do you want in that situation? How do you want to be treated in that situation? You want to be treated with response number 1, right? And it's very likely that your partner is treating you in response number 1. I assume that. And if they're doing that to you, you have to do it as well. Now, your perception of the red and the green arrow is higher than other people because you have borderline. You have a hypersensitivity towards bad traits and also good traits. And this hypersensitivity makes you realize situation 1, 2, and 3 more consciously than other people. But still no excuse. It's not an excuse to apply the rigorous number 2 even though they don't do it. So it has something to do with fairness, and it has something to do with the baseline emotion of number 1 that you chose when the arrows were equal. And this kind of fairness is nice. It's a clear system. It's a system that you apply in your life. It's a system that you apply in the way that you're dealing with other people, and it makes sense. It's a system that is based on a clear way and clear way of thinking. I don't know if you want to call this morals or ways of how you interact with people, but having a clear program in your mind that programs your fluctuating emotions is always the best way how to deal with it, right? So if you're in a relationship and you're over-evaluating the person, you have to realize, okay, this is situation number 2, and situation number 2 is obviously in the benefit of my partner, because obviously I'm going to be happy about it. But if situation number 1 occurs, I have to remember that the baseline is answer number 1, which is strengthening the bond in a baseline situation. And it's only fair to apply this in all situations. So that's what you tell yourself in situation number 2. And I know that emotions are hyper stimulated, and that you feel rage and that you feel disgust more. But you have to understand that this devaluation that you feel is not genuine. It's not based on rationale, because what is based on rationale is the example that I gave you and the responses that you gave me this year. See? So don't act upon these bad traits. Don't act upon the devaluation that you feel, because situation number 2 causes you devaluation. It causes you devaluation, and you cannot control it, but you can control the output of the devaluation. So the output of this should be a conscious choice not to go for response number 2, but rather to go for response number 1, because as I just told you, it's the fair thing to do, and also the rational thing to do based on the baseline example. So you have a conscious choice. You're not acting on the devaluation. You choose to act based on the rationale. And you apply this, and yeah, you're still disgusted, but you're not going to reflect it in your behavior. You're not going to cut the ties with the person. You're not going to start to insult a person or pick a fight. You're going to say, okay, I'm going through devaluation. Give me a time to break off. Give me just a moment to come back to my senses. Take an hour, take 2 hours, take 3 hours. Get yourself away from the interaction, and then come back to normal, and then reevaluate the situation. Now, sometimes you have situations in which you have to choose number 2, and this has nothing to do with the condition of borderline. This has something to do with basic human interaction. So if you're in a really, really toxic relationship and your partner is abusing you or is really making use of your vulnerabilities, and the person is just terrible, you have to respond as a normal person. And you know that this has nothing to do with borderline. It has nothing to do with the arrows and overvaluation or devaluation of the person. This is just basic human behavior. If the person is being terrible with you, and you know that this person is terrible, and you know that you're not acting on the enraged devaluation, but you're acting on the behalf of a calm mind, you still have to make the wise decision of, hey, I'm not going to continue this relationship if it's bad, right? But that's not usually the case in borderline, in which problems happen in borderline. Borderline problems in relationships happen on a day-to-day basis on small topics, not really big or crucial matters. And it's usually the aggressor is usually the person with borderline, because when they feel devaluation, just like the person in the video, they don't know if this is their actual genuine emotion or if this is just the condition playing around with them, you see. But once you know and realize that this is the condition, you're going to be really smart. You're going to know that I'm not going to get tricked again. I know that this is the condition, that's why I'm not going to act on this devaluation. I know there is a different thought process behind it, as I explained here, and that's why I'm not going to act on it. Now, it's unfortunate she did not have the privilege to have this kind of thought process. And the result is that she doesn't know. When he asked her, do you want to hurt someone? She said yes. And then she said no. So she has a conflicted response to it, because she's not aware of this. My video, or my videos that I'm trying to convey, is I'm trying to convey you the way of seeing through the constant deception that you get from this condition. I want you to be able to differentiate between what is you and what is the manifestation, and to clearly put a differentiation between the two. This insight so important, and it can help you a lot of trouble in your relationships. At the end, I want to say that I've been giving my partner a hard time before I realized that I have the condition. Once I realized I have the condition, and I realized that all this happens, man, it was so different. It was really different. I'm not able to act on the devaluation anymore. Even if I'm being aggressed and I know that the person is picking a fight with me, I don't respond to it anymore the same way as I did in the past, because I know I don't want to get tricked. I don't want to be a victim of my own clinical manifestations of borderline and act in a stupid way. I can actively pull myself out of the fight and say, hey, I'm not going to engage, because I know that my brain is not, it's too aggressive right now, so I cannot function in the fight right now, in the argument. And believe it or not, it was an unbelievable addition. Having this kind of insight in the relationship helped so much in relieving lots of the manifestations of borderline in relationships. And again, thanks guys for watching the video. And I know the tone of my voice in this video was more of a, I wouldn't say agitated, but maybe a little bit more of a assertive voice, because I feel like this has to be conveyed with assertion. It's not a matter of maybe this happens, maybe not. No, this happens, and I know it happens, and that's why this is assertion correctly placed. So I hope you don't perceive this as in a negative way, and I really do hope this video helped you a lot, and maybe provided you some tactics on how to gain insight in borderline personality disorder. If you liked it, guys, give me a like, give me a subscribe, and let's hope that or I hope at least that this channel can help as many people as possible with borderline personality disorder. Thanks, guys.